Hello and welcome to this week's energy forecast. If I could explain to you in a sentence this weekend to today, the easiest way I could describe it energetically is I've experienced a whole week of living in one day. So if that is any kind of foreshadowing of this week may be for you jam-packed with upheaval, life lessons, insights, ahas, breakthroughs, which are all the zest of life. It really adds this flavor that when we're bored, we want it. When we have it, we want to be bored again. So this week, I want to invite you to come back into the centered place that knows that the chaos, the crazy, the influx of new ideas or information or change is coming at the rate that you are prepared to manage. Not manage in the way that we usually think of managing our lives, like, okay, this is what I do on Monday. But what I mean by manage is that we are trusting ourselves to receive what life brings to us as it does, and know what to do with the information when we receive it. To know what path to take when it's time to take a certain path. To remember, to recall that I know what to do here when I'm in this predicament. I know what brings me comfort. I know that this feeling that I'm feeling isn't punishment, but rather it's feedback, it's information. So I guess if I could coin this week anything, it would be a week of mastery, a week of practicing the things you've been practicing for quite some time now. If you've been listening to the energy forecast, has it been a year? I'm not even sure, but I feel like a year and a half or so. So pandemic, after the initial shock, who you started to become in that process over this past year and a half. We are being kind of thrown into life. Life is coming at us, and we're being called to step up, to show up, and to be that self that, again, maybe the first thought isn't, oh, I've got this, but on the deeper layer, we're being called to be that deeper self, that knowing self that can handle what's coming towards you. Last week we talked about being in the fog and really not seeing clearly where we're going and how that can feel. So then life kind of clears the way for you, and it's like, oh, here, and you're presented with different opportunities, as my acupuncturist calls it, to practice what you know. Oftentimes, so I do martial arts, and oftentimes, especially in the beginning stages of combat, and someone throwing punches or kicks at me, I reverted back to what I would do as a kid. I would run. I would kind of scoot around, especially my siblings. I'm the youngest, so they were always faster, stronger, and bigger than me, so running was a really good choice. Over time, I developed the understanding that I have tools and I can use them. So similar to me in combat, you have tools and you know that you can use them, but it's okay if you're reverting back to default. Catching yourself as quickly as you possibly can this week and going, ooh, okay, I'm noticing this discomfort. I'm noticing a pattern that I've done so many times before. I'm going to practice what I have learned. So in the practicing of what I've learned in fighting, it's not, first I'm, oh, success and that's it. It's, oh, that worked. that could have worked a little differently, and this continued evolution forward, right? All of life is this, we pick up information along our trail, put it in our backpack, and we carry that forward with us. Nothing that you have ever experienced, and I like pause when I'm saying this because I go, you sure? Nothing you've ever experienced has been a waste for you if you will allow it to be a greater lesson for your entire life. Something as small as hurting yourself or hurting another person or making a really stupid mistake. None of that is waste. All of it is feedback. And this week isn't necessarily time to kind of dig into like, what have I learned? This is kind of more like go time. It's like, I'm pointing over here because this is where me and my fiance fight. Not just arguments, when we're physically fighting. It's trusting what you know in that moment, trusting yourself. You fall back into old tendencies. You just catch yourself and go, ooh, all right, I don't need to get down on myself. I don't need to be harsh critic Laura right now. I need to be supportive. You've got this. You know how to handle this. Don't freak out, man, Laura. That's going to be a really helpful stance to take with yourself this week. And if we look at what is going on a global level, the suffering, the sadness, the hurt, the loss, the fear, you probably see that reflected somewhere in your very small circle of your own life, of your own, maybe even just between your two ears, which really speaks to the connectedness of all beings. When one suffers, we all can resonate on some level, although our pain is quite different. We all know what it feels like to suffer in some form or another. So having compassion for those that are suffering immensely right now, and also, despite your suffering maybe not being on that level, that grand, like, wow, that is kind of newsworthy suffering, it doesn't mean you don't owe yourself some compassion and some space. You do have what it takes to move through the current challenges you are facing. The time you have to wait, the hurdles you're feeling you have to move around under, kind of, skate by, the confrontation, the inner pep talks, all of those things. It's not a lack of mastery. It's taking the skills that you've acquired in this past year and a half or so and applying them. It's fight time, it's go time, and you are being encouraged to practice with the tools you already have in your tool belt, not acquiring new stuff. You don't need anything outside of you. This week, we just need to remember all that we are, all that we came here to be, all that we have discovered along our trail in our beingness. And that could kind of sound a bit out there and a little bit kind of idealistic, but I'm here to uplift. I'm here to remind you of what you're capable of, and it is wondrous things. And if you don't hear it from anybody, I'll be the one to tell you this week that you are capable of facing what you're perceiving as a giant mountain. You are totally capable of not just moving up that mountain, but also going beyond the place that you've been before in your own mind, in your own relationship to yourself. Do you know how much you discount your value? How much you undermine all the experiences you've had and all the wisdom you've gained from that? I'm here to tell you that you are so much more than you give yourself credit for. And you don't have to believe it right now, but some part of you resonates with that. some part of you knows that I'm telling you the truth. And so maybe you give that part of you, that tiny itsy bitsy part of you, some space. What does he know? What does she know? How true is that for me? Because we're so quick to really kind of fluff up the bad things that we are, our insecurities and our shortcomings. We're really, really good at pointing those out and making a big to-do and criticizing ourselves. But what we are not so practiced at, which we could definitely improve on this week, is this kind of reinvention of the way we talk to ourselves, this pivoting. And I'm laughing, I'm just thinking about the Friends reference. If you haven't, Ross, pivot, YouTube it. Pivoting to, wait, what wonderful qualities am I exuding right now? And how can I kind of feather that up? How can you? I taught my fiance how to fluff a pillow. So like, how do we fluff that up? How do we make it full? How can we feed that part of ourselves? Because we're well fed in the criticism department. But how well fluffed and fed are you in the bolstering up of your self-confidence? How much are you really offering yourself the inner support that you not only deserve, but have really worked to gain because of your experience that you've survived sometimes and other times thrived through? Your willingness to begin to offer yourself kindness is going to change your life, is going to put a spin on things that you once, marked as impossible to change, impossible to feel different about. Your willingness to just for a moment view yourself as capable, as more than you've been able to see yourself as before, can and will make a significant shift for you. And if this kind of feels overwhelming, you're like, yo, chill, like this is too much too fast, that's all right too. Let's honor where you are. But maybe we rewind this tape, maybe we kind of go back and go, okay, I can't take all that in, but I can take a couple things. And if you can take just one small part of anything that I said about how capable you are, that little seedling will eventually become more. On the topic of more, there are so many different levels of humans, like I think about business owners that have been in the business for 25 years versus me going 5 years in. We are at, a little moth, we are at different, I swear a bug always comes in. I'm going to put in the description of this what moth means, because every animal has some sort of, any insect, everything on the planet has some sort of symbolic meaning. But, we can look to people who are more kind of seasoned in the game of life, 25 years of a business owner versus me. We're at much different levels. But just because you have more experience or less experience, there is always something to learn to someone who is new, someone who is old, someone who's in between. And the kind of race to compete for more, we're shifting out of that dynamic of like, oh, I gotta be better than the next door neighbor, I gotta be, because I believe as a collective, we're starting to shift out of I need to be better than that person and into I want to be a better me than I was yesterday, than I was last year. I want to be a better business owner than I was last year, even than I was last week and over this weekend. I had a rough weekend, even a rough start to today, but even practicing this kind of fluffing up of what I'm capable of, that I don't need to show up as perfect here, that I can just be myself, and that is a benefit to all. So moving away from, well, they have more experience, but they don't. It's a mind trap. It's our mind's way of trying to kind of categorize other people and find where we are in the hierarchy. There's something very natural about wanting to know where you are in the hierarchy, but there's a more conscious being available to us. And I'll kind of leave that up to you, if you're willing to go there, what that means to you and what that being is all about. And one last thing that I'll mention this week is that there is no one to save, no image of yourself to save. There is no identity of you that needs to be saved or sheltered or kept just right. There is nothing that we need to hold on to for fear of what's to come. It's like the aging process, it's inevitable. And fighting it only makes the shift and the changes in your life so much harder. So the same is true of old identities, ways of being. We kind of want to drag it along, and there is no need for that. There's no need to save, to carry on this past version of you forward. Know that the aspects of you that are really important to be available to you at any time, within your own personality, within your life experience, those aspects of you will arise in the time they need to. So what if you could imagine cutting all cords from the past and allowing yourself to be this present now you? Looking forward into the future, having an idea of what you want for yourself, bigger goals and dreams you have. But also accepting the now you that you have become. What would that look like for you? If you were to accept who you are right here, right now, in this very moment in time, allowing the past version of you to be what it was, and who you are right now to be who he or she is right now. Completely trusting that everything I've learned, everything that's important to carry forward, I will have an impulse about, I'll have a memory of in the time that I need to. But I don't need to continue to carry old stuff around. I don't need to hold on to any aspect of me. And if you've experienced loss of a parent, of a friend, of a pet, of a home, of a belonging that was precious to you, you very much so understand that though that pet has passed, or that belonging has disappeared, or that loved one is not physically here, that the essence of that thing continues on with you. That we don't lose those bonds because that physical representation no longer exists. And applying that knowing, that feeling to who you are, that the essence of who you are remains constant. There's nothing to fight. There's nothing to hold on to. Be as you are. And I thank you for tuning in to this week's energy forecast. I deeply appreciate you. Oh, and some really good news. If you are local to my area, I'm going to be taking in-person sessions Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm going to make a new schedule up. It's not available right now, but coming very soon to you for this fall. Fingers crossed. We can kind of keep this rolling for a little while. And that is all for tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I deeply appreciate you. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll talk to you soon.